So in this segment, we're going to be kind of wading into the bizarre feud between Boris Johnson and Nigel Farrage and Tucker Carlson, and this is stuff. You can say this is drama stuff, but this is funny, like so funny. Also, Boris Johnson says Ukraine should join the EU, and we'll discuss that towards the end of this video. But this is hilarious stuff here. So we go to Boris Johnson talking about Tucker Carlson.
I have been appalled to discover how many people. I've just been here for a couple of days. It's been wonderful. I always have a wonderful time in Washington. But I've been amazed and horrified by how many people are frightened of a guy called Tucker Carlson. Has anybody heard of Tucker Carlson? What is it with this guy?
It's just funny how he's just mocking him. It's like, who is this guy, Tucker Carlson? Like, you guys are all scared of him. Like, but who is this man? Really big Khabib vibes here.
All these wonderful Republicans seem somehow intimidated by his perspective, and I haven't watched anything that he's said, but I'm struck by how often this comes up. Some bad ideas are getting into. Starting to infect some of the thinking around the world about what Putin stands for.
Starting to happen. It's been happening for decades, Chief. So we cut to this clip of Boris Johnson being confronted with some of the stuff Nigel Farrage said, and it just keeps getting funnier.
You said something in a British documentary about Putin, saying that you felt that he was threatening you at one of the conversations you had about I could fire a missile, essentially, to take you out.
Yeah.
The Russians pushed back on that characterization very hard. Some of your own countrymen raised questions about it. Here's Nigel Farrage on our air the other day.
As ever with Boris Johnson, lots of personality, lots of colour, good story, but when it comes to facts, when it comes to detail, when it comes to the absolute truth, I think Boris Johnson's relationship with those things is somewhat loose, to put it mildly.
And it's funny, ha 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 ha. But you guys were top dons in the Brexit campaign. So for you to kind of call Boris Johnson a liar now is a bit weird, considering you backed him in the 2019 general election and you backed him during the Brexit referendum. So sorry, Nigel, not a lot of sympathy for you here.
Yeah, well, I wanted to get you to respond to that directly.
Well, look, I think that the Kremlin, and I don't know if Nigel's speaking for the Kremlin, but the Kremlin are fabled for their complete refusal to tell the truth about anything that's happening in Ukraine. I think what
and he's kind of linked the two with each other without being direct about it. He's kind of said that the Johnson, what's his name, Nigel Farrage is getting some talking points from the Kremlin, or at least echoing their talking points, which is nasty work there from Johnson. And it's pretty funny stuff here. So we go to the next clip, which is Tucker Carlson being, and I really don't like Politics Joe for the formatting they've used here, because they've uploaded the clip, but shouts out to him for uploading it. But there was a response from Nigel Farrage, but I don't have that at hand. But I've got this from Tucker Carlson, which is hilarious, of the way he speaks about him.
Boris Johnson is a famously articulate man.
Is he?
He's the kind of guy who can quote Aeschylus from memory in a dinner toast and still make you laugh. So we figured he was perfect. A few hours before airtime, his publicist called to say that Boris Johnson wasn't coming. And that meant that Boris Johnson, reputed to be the smartest leader of any English-speaking country in the world, did not want to publicly defend.
He's not the smartest leader of any English-speaking country. I'd argue Jacinda Ardern is more intelligent than him. I'd argue, Old Man Joe is more intelligent than him. I'd argue Leo Varadkar, if you class Ireland as an English-speaking nation. Because, you got the Irish language as well, Gaelic I think it's called. I'd argue Leo Varadkar is more intelligent than him. Whoever's in charge of Australia now, probably more intelligent than him, I'll be honest. So for them to argue, he's the most intelligent English speaker of any kind of leader is genuinely one of the most stupid things I've ever heard from a guy who looks confused every time I pause the video.
And his position on Ukraine. He was afraid to take questions about it. All these cowards in Washington are afraid of this show, Boris Johnson said derisively. Yet somehow he never mentioned that he is one of them. Again, we had just invited Johnson on this show hours before he said that. It was remarkable and remarkably dishonest. We knew that Johnson himself was a coward. We watched during COVID as he transitioned into a terrified old woman.
You didn't mention he hid in the fridge, Chief. You had the perfect opportunity to mention that Johnson hid in a fridge to hide from interviewers. Oh my God, how are you not mentioning that? Where are your research team? I know one of your guys used to write for like a neo-Nazi webpage. I think it's called The Stormtrooper or something like that. But how are you not mentioning that he hid in a fridge, my guy? Like, come on, Tucker, mate.
But we had no idea he was also a liar. We should have known.
You had no idea this man was a liar. Suddenly, when Boris Johnson starts calling these guys out, suddenly Boris Johnson's relationship with the truth, as Nigel Farrage said, and Boris Johnson's a liar apparently according to these people. Suddenly, he tells lies. But these people during 2019, fair enough, Tucker's in America, but 2019 and 2016, I didn't hear a peep about Boris Johnson's lies. If anything, they would have backed him, and now suddenly my man's a liar because he's called these two out. Madness, absolute madness. And I can tell you why they're scared of Tucker Carlson, because Tucker Carlson is the best right-wing propagandist probably in the world. I'll be honest, he's one of the best at it, most definitely. He portrays himself as a right-wing populist, on the side of the working class, but it's not the fault of the rich people who've done you in there. It's the fault of the immigrant, the other. That's how Tucker kind of rolls, and the kind of friendship or kind of the really bad alliance between kind of the quote left-wing populists and the right-wing populists. It's absolutely terrifying. But we go to probably the clip everyone's spoken about, which I find not too surprising, but also surprising at the same time, because I don't think Boris Johnson was always against the EU. I think he's used it more recently as kind of during his premiership and during the referendum as a way to kind of get clout within the party, and that's why I think he says this and he genuinely believes it.
Once the Ukrainians have won, then yes, they should begin the process of induction both to NATO and, of course, to the EU.
Surprising he's mentioned the EU, and people are like, surprised by that. I think he's been a lot more honest here outside of kind of mainstream politics. And do you know what? As much as I dislike Boris Johnson, I hope he continues to do speaking tours in America. He gets paid bank, and I don't care about that bit. But I'm enjoying him going after certain political figures like Tucker Carlson. I mean, this call out of Tucker Carlson, genuinely the funniest things, because I'm amazed that I've suddenly heard about this random dude who I've never heard of before, and you guys are all scared of him. Why are you scared of him for? He's a nobody, which I find genuinely funny stuff. Maybe it's the crappy kind of, the fact that I don't like pro wrestling, but I like the kind of dramatization of it in a sense. Maybe it's that part of me. But Boris Johnson, really feuding with Tucker Carlson and Nigel Farrage is genuinely one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And maybe Johnson didn't feel like debating with Tucker Carlson because, like I said, he's the number one propagandist, I think, right-wing propagandist in the world, which is lofty status. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.